Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be bringing you another interview, this one which I've been working on for a while, but I'm pleased to be joined with Ashley Washington from Riot Games. Welcome, first of all, to the video. Thank you so much for spending some of your time here to answer some questions about the Game Changers scene in general, some general things. So for those who are not too familiar with your role in the scene or who you are, could you describe who it is you are and what it is you do?
Yes, I'm Ashley. I am the product manager for VCT Game Changers EMEA, the women's Valorant tournament that we conduct over at Riot for the last 2 years now. My job is basically just planning it, making sure that we have our eyes on good strategy, and keeping my ear to the ground to kind of see where the players are at with things and how teams are feeling about the experience.
Cool. All right. So that was like an introduction of you in terms of what your role is. But I wanted to ask, first of all, how did you get started in gaming? Like, what is your earliest memories of gaming in general?
That's a really great question that I've actually not been asked before, I think, so far. Yeah, I started playing games when I was a kid. My parents were actually also playing games, so I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family of gamers. I have 5 younger siblings who I also played a lot of games with, and this mostly started with like Nintendo 64, but I got my first console when I was 10. It was a GameCube. It was Resident Evil. And I kind of fell in love with games from there. I would say things didn't start getting competitive until high school when I was playing a lot of like Halo and Gears of War and stuff like this. And I would say this is also when online gaming got like really strong, kind of in the mid 2000s, when it was just super easy to get online with your friends. And this is kind of where things sat with me for a long time. Gaming was my main hobby, and I stuck with it. I eventually also studied it at New York University, and now I work with games. So it's very much been a lifelong pursuit for me.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I know a lot of people who maybe started out with console and games like Halo and Gears of War that then moved in towards esports. So my next question was, what was your sort of biggest inspiration to get into esports in general and then make that into a career, I suppose?
Yeah, I would have to say that there wasn't like a singular inspiration other than trying to make a career in gaming.
Yeah.
And I realized that like working at a conventional gaming company, at least in my experience, had been a relatively unstable sort of pursuit where I would work with mobile games that didn't really, hit their targets, and the company wouldn't last for very long and this sort of thing. And since I started getting into working in games when I moved to Berlin in 2016, it was also at a moment where Berlin started really kind of strengthening its reputation for an esports city. And there were a lot of esports companies looking to start all kinds of different esports adjacent work. And I started out actually at a company that was focused on making apps for helping players get better at games like League and Dota and PUBG.
Yeah.
And this is what inspired me to get into esports, because I liked the idea that a game that you really liked playing casually could be something you put enough effort in to make it a career, to kind of focus it and be really good and be so good that people might want to watch you.
Yeah.
And this is what really inspired me to shift from normal games into esports, I would say. I didn't really, it's I think not a super like surprising fact that there aren't like a lot of Black women in esports. So I definitely have to say that there was not really any thing or person that really made like screamed you should be here to me. But it was definitely one of those things where I felt like I connected a lot with just the sort of zero to hero story, I guess, and
Yeah.
really wanted to do more of that and be part of it.
Yeah, and I might actually shift around the order of the questions that I had there then, because you said that there wasn't anyone necessarily that you saw as a role model, I guess, in that respect then. So what does that then mean for the importance of having role models in the Game Changers scene and for new players who are coming into that space?
Yeah, I think that there are definitely players out there who maybe don't rely on this as much, who just feel like they kind of need the opportunity, and that's good enough for them, to get out there and show themselves. But I think there are a lot of people, especially in like underrepresented groups within women, for example, the identity group of women, that really would like to see more people who have a journey that mirrors theirs before they kind of take the plunge and like really invest a lot of energy and time into, you know, working to be the best in a title or in a space. I think sometimes it helps to see someone there already doing it. And I think that this is, you know, affecting, you know, players on a team or talent or just, you know, running a tournament like I am, this kind of thing. I think that when you see someone there like you, and when it comes to race, for example, like as a Black woman, there are so many reasons why Black women are just not like super well represented in gaming in general. When you see someone there that looks like you have an idea that this person may have overcome similar obstacles to you to get there. And this says in so many ways, okay, if she did it, I can do this too. You know? And I think that this is one of the strongest factors that influence somebody feeling like they can, you know, join themselves. That this story, this journey has happened before. This like
path, I suppose.
Yes, this path has been traveled before. The adversity has been in some way transcended. I think this is so important because it's really what keeps you going when things get really tough as well. You know, to not see that brick wall as like a dead end, and rather just a door that's a little difficult to open.
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, I guess then as well, would you say that's what is most significant about Game Changers to you? What exactly does Game Changers as a whole mean to you as a person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say it's hard to say like what's the most significant thing about Game Changers is to me, because I think that this is one very significant thing, but because we're working on making sure that the women involved in Game Changers get the exposure they need, in many cases it's one of those things where we're still working to make sure that the role models are visible in the first place. So of course it's something that's super important, but I think the most important thing about Game Changers to me is really that platform is even there, because there are a variety of goals that the players have, trajectories in career that they seek, and I think that the first step to activating those things, to really like growing those things in general, is that there's a platform to do it with in the first place, that the tournament is there, that the community is there, that we're engaging with them and having the conversations that need to be had to make sure that we can move forward in general. And I think that this is really at the core of the whole thing, that once this space exists, all of those conversations can happen and all of those dreams get that much closer to some sort of manifestation.
I mean, it's a great platform that's been created already, and it's one that's constantly expanding. Last tournament, you had 126 teams which participated, and that number, I'm sure, will continue to grow. What are some of your future aims for the next season of the circuit, or even beyond that, I suppose, if I'm not getting too far ahead of myself? The last one just wrapped up, and you know we've got the international LAN coming up too.
It's honestly a really good question. It's something that I'm actually thinking about myself right now, obviously, and unfortunately I can't spoil too much about next year, which plays a lot into what I would like to see. But I think first and foremost, I would like to see us continue to max out the tournament, right? Because at the time that signups closed, we were actually just straight up maxed out. So 130 teams, I think, out of 128. We had 2 on the wait list. Kind of normal that some things might happen once the tournament starts, but in general it'd be great to see that continue, because that's already growth from the last series. The other thing that I would ultimately like to see is that Game Changers players as individuals or as teams playing in other tournaments in the space more frequently. Ideally in the rest of the ecosystem proper. But I mean, we've already seen tournaments recently that have some mixed rosters with Game Changers players on them. This, I think, is like really at the base of what we want the future to be like with Game Changers. We essentially want players to grow and skill up in the space and then feel comfortable being outside of Game Changers and playing
Mm.
with other Valorant players that, maybe not just on a women's roster. It would be cool to see like a full women's roster in the scene. I'm not really sure how likely that is. I think people are probably going to be quicker to like mix the rosters first.
Mhm.
But I would say maintaining the growth and seeing these teams or players kind of exist elsewhere in the Valorant ecosystem are
Mm.
essentially at the top of my list for what I would like to see going into the next year.
Yeah, so it's like creating the platform and then using that platform to elevate these players to a state where they're then able to be fully integrated in the main circuit and be really pushing at the highest level of competition.
Absolutely, 100%.
So then, looking forwards to the slightly more nearer future, I suppose, then, and that event that we have coming up in Berlin, what are you most excited about from that event?
Oh my
I mean, if you could pin it down to one thing, I'm sure there's plenty to get excited about.
Yes, I feel like just as excited as the fans are about this one, because I think having all of these Game Changers teams in one space in person is going to be phenomenal. And also this opportunity for the community to connect as well in the audience, to be there. I fully expect the audience to have a lot of Game Changers players in it, actually. And I know it's not like super high level on the product side, but I'm just really stoked to have everybody in one place cheering each other on and kind of just celebrating the presence of all of these amazing players who have dealt with pretty similar crap across the board to be there. And just kind of watching everybody play at their best.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Like I would love to go, but if there are certainly other teams that perhaps won't get the opportunity to go. So if you could invite an additional team, whether that's from EMEA or elsewhere as a wild card, who would it be? If you got anyone that you would have liked to have seen make it to the event that's not already confirmed?
Yeah, I'm like the worst person to ask this because I'm like literally always trolling everybody and saying that I want everybody to win. But I'd have to say like obvious ones from like top performance in the most recent series, Navi Celestials, Tenstar Nova, easy. But if I had to like throw a wild card in there, probably Alliance Coven, because I just love them so much. Their energy is so good all the time. All the time. It's always 110. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I saw that they had the boot camp as well. I know other teams like Ascend also had a boot camp. I'd be interested to see how they would do. They're a team which I think is, consistently improved time on time. So yeah, it's great to see these teams who have that personality about them, and also these organizations that want to give them that support and help create these boot camps for those players to thrive in, really. Those are all the questions that I have. Now then, moving on to the community questions, the first one of which I had set up a while ago. It was, would there be a crowd? That's now been confirmed, so that's fantastic to hear, of course. And then in terms of audiences for Game Changers events in the future, is there anything that we can perhaps expect down the line, ahead of the LEC studio?
Yeah, this is like a question that's very closely tied to like plans for next year. So without giving away too much, I can definitely say that one of the most important parts of the planning process going into next year has been how can we create more opportunities for the EMEA community to connect offline and in person. While we're not really sure exactly what that could look like, it's definitely in the backbone of what we're trying to set up for next year, because I think one thing that's going to be really important, especially after the stage has been set with this LAN, is that this is something that the community values, that they need even in some ways. And it is absolutely core in my philosophy for how we should set up Game Changers moving forward, that this community aspect is honed as much as possible within the program. So while I can't say exactly what we will try to do moving forward, I can definitely assure everyone that our eyes and hearts are on making sure that we have more like in-person audience.
No, that
action happening for EMEA.
Yeah, that's really great to hear as well, because I know we had some smaller LAN events set up by the community, like Project Queens, for example, a few months back, and now looking in towards the Game Changers LAN is really, really promising stuff, and I can't wait to see how all of it pans out. Next community question was, are there any news on a potential EMEA Game Changers Academy? Because I know we have the Game Changers Academy in NA. Are there any plans or updates on that one whatsoever?
Yes, this is maybe the most popular question that I get all the time. And by the way, that yes was not a yes to the question. Okay, so the answer to this question is that I cannot confirm that there is Academy in the works for next year. What I can confirm is that one of the things we're looking at going into next year is an extension of Game Changers that will hopefully give amateur players a home for more consistent gameplay and learning opportunities to better set them up for success within Game Changers and outside of it.
Okay, cool. That's really good to hear. And then I think the last community question that we had, and one which I saw you reply to, so I'm going to throw it in here anyway, was from Gigi, and it's, can I get a Riot gun buddy? I mean, how many times have you been asked that at this point in time?
Honestly, I'd be open to giving anybody who plays Valorant with me a gun buddy, because after playing Valorant with me, you will deserve a gun buddy.
Damn. Okay, that's a big promise, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I know there's probably like a dozen different names I could throw out and say they would give you a gun buddy, but that'll just fill up their DM requests. So I don't think they want me to do that whatsoever. So
it's okay. Yeah. My DMs are already full, so it's cool.
I can imagine. But yeah. So to wrap things up, then, do you have any early predictions in terms of looking towards that international lands of who's gonna come out as some of the stronger teams, and then would you maybe want to chance EMEA versus NA, because that is a matchup that I'm really looking forward to, with Cloud9 coming in being so incredibly strong, and then G2 as well. Those are the two main names that you'll be looking at, but of course there are other teams to focus on as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you the answer I always give everyone, and that is that I hope that all teams win, because no, just kidding. My prediction, I mean, if you're looking at just like performance over time, I mean, obviously G2 is the favorite for kind of, taking the lead and holding it. But hey, we've seen Guild X do something that we previously did not think was possible. So first of all, EMEA is obviously going to take the tournament. But second of all, I think it's a coin toss. It could be G2 and it could be Guild, since we haven't really seen these teams compete against each other in general. I think it's going to be probably the most tense and exciting set of matchups that we've seen in Game Changers so far. And I'm honestly just looking forward to seeing how EMEA stacks up against the other regions. I think it'll really set the tone for next year.
I think that first G2 Guild game that we saw as well was great, like a 5-mapper in the finals, and some serious players on both sides immediately, names that pop up like Anya and Giuliano, like serious superstar players. So I'm really looking forward to how they're going to fare. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up all the questions that I have. So thank you very much, Ashley, for your time. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to, any topics you wanted to cover perhaps, or any shout outs, I suppose, to stuff you've got upcoming other than the LAN?
Honestly, I'm just sitting tight for the LAN, and also keeping hard at work at setting up for 2023. I think it's just a really good time to sit back and enjoy the excitement that we've had for the year for Game Changers within the region, and kind of channel all of the energy we have left into supporting our EMEA teams for the competition we're about to see next month. So I just have to continuously express how excited and grateful I am to be part of the whole thing. And I am really looking forward to doing all of this development and evolution justice with our plans for next year.
Yeah, and I'm sure that with all the work that you've done, you'll certainly due a rest before the event, and then after it, of course, as well. And once more, thank you so much for your time and agreeing to do this interview with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.